You want me to take over from here, Jed, or are you going to start the introduction?
I'll kick things off. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
And I'll hand over to you shortly. But
Yep.
good morning, everyone. Just about ready to go with our webinar on Guarantee of Origin, cost recovery from renewable electricity Guarantee of Origin. Thank you all for coming. We are just going to give it maybe one more minute as we still have a few attendees coming in. Excellent. All right, well, we might kick things off. So welcome everyone to our Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin, or REGO Cost Recovery webinar. My name is Jet Chong, and I'm the manager of the Strategic Policy and Analysis team at the Clean Energy Regulator. My team is responsible for supporting the development of the Guarantee of Origin scheme, including the cost recovery arrangements for the scheme. I'd like to start today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the many lands from which we are dialing in from today. I wish to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as traditional custodians of the land that I'm calling in from, and recognise any other people or families with connection to the lands of the ACT and region. I wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of the city and the region, and like to acknowledge and welcome any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be attending today's event. So before we go into the webinar proper, we have a couple of elements of housekeeping. So today's webinar on the Guarantee of Origin cost recovery arrangements is scheduled for around an hour, with a lot of time scheduled at the end of the presentation for questions and answers on cost recovery and Guarantee of Origin. The webinar is being recorded, and the links will be made available to the recording on the CR website after today's session. During this webinar, your microphone and video feeds will not be turned on, but you will be able to ask questions through the Teams Q&A function, which should be located at the top of your screen. In order to submit a question, please open the Q&A box or button at the top right-hand corner, and that should then pop open a box from which you can submit questions into chat, and those will be responded to at the end. You should also be able to see questions that have been submitted by other people, there is a function for voting up questions that you find of interest, which will bring them to the attention of the team for answering earlier on. So please do use that function if you do see other questions which are of interest. We do recommend not asking any questions that may be private or sensitive in nature during the webinar. If you wish to contact the regulator, there will be contact details provided at the end of this presentation on emails. We also note that if there are any questions that can't be responded to in today's session on the cost recovery arrangements, they will be categorized thematically, and we will respond to them alongside the recording links once available. And any matters of policy do fall outside the domain of the regulator. We will refer on to our colleagues in the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water. With the housekeeping out of the way, we'll just touch briefly on the coverage of today's presentation. So the webinar today will cover a brief overview of the Guarantee of Origin scheme, and in particular 101 on the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin, and go for a further deep dive into the fees, levies and overall cost recovery approach for the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin elements of the scheme. In today's session, I will be supported by Sandra Williamson, who is an assistant manager in our team, who will be managing the questions and answer section for discussion at the end of the presentation. We do also online have a number of colleagues from across the Clean Energy Regulator and our colleagues at the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water. I will now hand over to Matt Powell, General Manager at the Clean Energy Regulator, for a number of initial comments. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks for the introduction, Jet. As Jet said, thank you for joining us for this webinar. We appreciate the time you've taken to engage with the Guarantee of Origin cost recovery consultation. The GO scheme will commence in the second half of the year. CER is getting ready to administer the scheme alongside our DECU colleagues who are finalising those key legislative instruments, and a couple of those are out for consultation as we speak. And we'd advise you to review those additional subordinate legislation, provide feedback to the department. We are looking forward to the GO scheme becoming a new pillar in the Australian climate policy framework, supporting higher levels of transparency and integrity, and supporting the development of low emissions products and energy markets, with hydrogen being the first product type to be certified under the scheme. The Renewable Energy Guarantee of Origin scheme will build on the large-scale generation certificate framework under the Renewable Energy Target and provides an enduring framework for certifying renewable electricity generation in Australia. We expect the REGO scheme will continue the work of the Renewable Energy Target in underpinning renewable electricity claims for corporate renewable energy or emissions reduction commitments, providing evidence of renewable inputs for low emission products, and providing certainty for the renewable electricity investment and procurement and support Australia's energy transformation. Stakeholder engagement has been an important part of the scheme's development, and we greatly appreciate the level of engagement over the design process. The current consultations provide opportunity for us to receive your feedback on the design of the scheme going forward. Cost recovery, charging for regulatory services to recover government costs, is an important element of the scheme that will support its long-term sustainability and stability. We know it impacts on industry, and we are keen to engage broadly to make sure we get the settings right. Today's session is an opportunity to outline the proposed approach for scheme commencement and to answer any questions people may have about the cost recovery process. The Guarantee of Origin scheme will continue to evolve over time, including cost recovery. There will be periodic reviews of the cost recovery settings as the scheme matures, so we expect this to be the start of an ongoing conversation. We appreciate all your views and engagements and hope you find today's session valuable. Before I pass back to Jet and Sandra, as he's said, we're really keen to get your insights and view on the scheme, and probably don't want individual involvement that you may do, but we're really keen at the Clean Energy Regulator to understand what type of involvement you may want to have in the scheme early on. This is to ensure the regulator can prepare and have systems, processes, forms built best for industry. So we're really keen to have you reach out to us and provide your initial views on how much involvement you may have in those early months of the scheme, but clearly not what we're discussing today. Back to you, Jet.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Matt. And that provides a good overview of the outcomes today. And like Matt says, very keen for further engagement. And notably at the end of the slide, again, there will be contact details if you wish to reach out to the regulator on any matters covered today's session or on the Guarantee of Origin scheme in general. So with that, we'll dive into a brief update on where the Guarantee of Origin scheme is as a whole, and then we will segue a little bit more into the detail of the renewable electricity element of the scheme. So as Matt noted, the overall GO scheme is planned to launch in the second half of 2025. So we're in the run-up to scheme commencement. Just to clarify the roles and responsibilities of the two key agencies, so our colleagues at the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, or DECU, are the department responsible for policy, including development of methodologies and rules for both the product guarantee of origin for products like hydrogen, as well as the renewable electricity guarantee of origin, which we will be discussing today. The Clean Energy Regulator will be the agency responsible for administering the scheme and undertaking regulatory operations, as we do across a number of our other regulatory schemes. The consultation, as Matt noted today, is there are a number of active consultations running. So in particular, from the regulator's perspective, we have a consultation currently available, hosted on our departmental colleagues' website on the cost recovery arrangement, proposed cost recovery arrangements for the Guarantee of Origin scheme. And we are seeking feedback on the proposed cost recovery arrangements. The purpose of today's session is to provide a bit of a further overview of what's been put out for consultation and to provide an opportunity for any questions and answers that may help in the process of gathering that engagement and responses on that consultation. The stakeholder feedback provided as part of the cost recovery approach will be considered, and where relevant, they will inform the final design of the cost recovery arrangements for the Guarantee of Origin scheme. And this will be set out in the document known as the Cost Recovery Implementation Statement, or the CRIS, and that will be published, the final version will be published ahead of scheme launch. As Matt also noted, there are a number of other consultations running on the Guarantee of Origin scheme at this time as well. In particular, our colleagues at DECU are currently consulting on the second tranche of GO subordinate legislation, which includes details on renewable electricity Guarantee of Origin rules, and that is also available on their consultation website, and consultation on those products closes on the 18th of July as well. We'll now move into a brief overview of the Guarantee of Origin scheme for any who may be less familiar or need a refresher, and I'll touch then briefly on the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin scheme design and provide a very brief overview before we talk further about cost recovery matters. So the Guarantee of Origin scheme is a voluntary assurance scheme which has been developed to track and verify both emissions associated with the production of low emissions products such as hydrogen, as well as certify and verify renewable electricity generation in Australia. So GO certificates and the GO scheme as a whole are intended to enhance the transparency of all scheme participants, allowing them to make verified claims about the attributes of their low emissions products and renewable electricity for the use in both domestic and international markets where applicable. So the GO scheme is all about providing transparency, helping to combat greenwashing, and helping to mature green markets for products in the Australian context. As we've mentioned in passing, there are sort of two elements to the Guarantee of Origin scheme that two separate pillars that certify different types of products. So the first one is called Product Guarantee of Origin, or PGO. So this type of Guarantee of Origin certificate certifies physical products such as hydrogen, fuels, metals, etc. And the intent is that these provenance-based and non-tradable certificates will capture the emissions intensity of those products and other attributes from their life cycle, including where they were produced, how they were produced, and how they were transported to a final end destination. The first product to be certified under the PGO framework will be hydrogen, and it's intended to then expand to other products over time. We won't be focusing so much on the Product Go side of the scheme today. There are a number, we are running one more webinar tomorrow, which will cover other Product Go cost recovery arrangements. So if that's of interest, I encourage you to register for that session. The element of the scheme, which will be of greatest focus for today's session, is the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin, or the REGO. So these certificates are tradable certificates that are used to support renewable electricity claims and certify renewable electricity generation. These claims may include use of renewable electricity as inputs for Product Go certificate creation, for example. So if people are using renewables to produce low emissions hydrogen or other products, REGOs will certainly be part of that certification framework, in addition to being able to certify use of renewables in a broader base. They share a lot of similarities with the renewable energy targets, large-scale generation certificates, and we'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a couple of slides' time, but also build on and expand the framework that already exists under the current renewable energy target by providing a broader range of certification and also providing additional features like timestamping. We will circle back to that in a little bit more detail, so we may move forward to just a brief overview of the overall operation of the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin scheme. So on the screen, at the moment we have a slide which outlines the overall flow of the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin. And it outlines the process by which a person may participate in the scheme from initial enrollment all the way through to creation of certificates. So broadly, the overall approach of the REGO scheme lifecycle is fairly similar to the existing renewable energy target scheme, in particular the large-scale renewable energy target, which allows registration of power stations and creation of large-scale generation certificates. So in the REGO context, we see some similarities. So in the first instance, you must enroll with the regulator as a registered person. So this is a common front door for any person seeking to participate in the Guarantee of Origin scheme. It's the point at which the regulator captures information about participants and ensures that they are fit and proper to be participants in the scheme. Once you're registered in that scheme as a registered person, you may then register your facilities or your power stations. This is again a fairly core step in which key information about your renewable electricity facility will be captured and registered and ensured that it is compliant and meets all the eligibility criteria to participate in the scheme. Once facilities have been registered under the REGO scheme, participants may then create REGO certificates to certify renewable electricity generation or dispatch of stored renewable electricity. So certificate must be created and then registered or validated by the Clean Energy Regulator. And in doing so, this will also be the point at which information on generation will need to be reported. Participants that are utilizing storage methodologies will need to demonstrate that they've inputted renewable electricity into that process, and in order to ensure that all of the requirements for the calculation methodologies to calculate the number of eligible REGO certificates that can be generated have appropriately been satisfied. So those REGO certificates are obviously a core component of the scheme and allow participants to then make claims about the renewable electricity that they produced. So the final elements of the life cycle of that scheme involve the ability to transfer REGO certificates through to other buyers or players in the certificate market. Those holders of REGO certificates may then apply to retire REGO certificates to make claims about the use of renewable electricity, and that will then reside with those stakeholders in order to then, who may then use those retired REGO certificates as proof of consumption of renewable electricity through the market. So we may move on to a brief overview and comparison between the REGO scheme and the Renewable Energy Target, or the RET. So we expect that a number of the participants in today's webinar and broadly participants in the REGO scheme in the future are likely to be players familiar in the renewable electricity space with the current Renewable Energy Target that's been running for many years, operated by the Clean Energy Regulator as well. And in a similar vein, under the Renewable Energy Target, you can, of course, create large-scale generation certificates that certify megawatt hours of renewable electricity. There are a number of key similarities and some differences between the two schemes, which I'll just touch on briefly. So in terms of similarities, overall, the objectives of the scheme and by way of certifying dispatch of renewable electricity is broadly similar. REGO certificates are tradable in the same way that LGCs are, and can likewise be used to make claims about renewable electricity generation and consumption. Each REGO certificate is intended to represent a megawatt hour of renewable electricity, again, similar to the LGC, and the eligible and ineligible renewable energy sources for the REGO scheme are proposed to align and match with those that are currently in place for the renewable energy target. We also note that both schemes do feature cost recovery. So we'll obviously be speaking a bit more about the REGO cost recovery arrangements today, but RET already has a number of cost recovery arrangements in place that achieve partial cost recovery under that scheme, where REGO will be seeking to achieve full cost recovery in time. We will speak to that a little bit later in today's presentation. I'll just note a couple of key differences between these two schemes. So the first one is, of course, that the REGO scheme is intended to be an enduring certification mechanism and will continue to operate after the RET scheme is scheduled to sunset at the end of 2030. So the REGO scheme is intended to provide some of that long-term successor and by way of renewable electricity certification frameworks. The REGO scheme will also certify storage facilities and also aggregated systems once rules are in place. So these are types of facilities which aren't necessarily able to be registered at present under the renewable energy target. So particular, for example, facilities like batteries that represent storage are currently not able to generate large-scale generation certificates. The REGO scheme is proposed to develop rules and methodologies that will allow for these types of facilities to generate and earn and credit certificates to recognize renewable electricity stored and later dispatched. Similarly, with aggregated systems, this may include groupings of renewable energy storage and generation systems at various sizes. Rules for that will be contemplated in future iterations of the scheme. Another difference in the REGO space that's worth noting is that REGO will allow certification of what we call below baseline generation. So this relates to generation from facilities, renewable electricity facilities that predated the renewable energy target, so pre-1997. And these facilities would be able to earn below baseline REGO certificates where they currently are not able to create large-scale generation certificates under the REP. We note that there are a number of restrictions proposed to apply to the use and retirement of these below baseline REGO certificates. And for further details on that, I would encourage you to look at the department's current consultation on the Tranche 2 Guarantee of Origin rules, which do include elements on the renewable electricity Guarantee of Origin side. A couple of further differences and iterations on the REGO scheme compared to the renewable energy target. Timestamping was one feature that was noted earlier, so particular REGO certificates will be able to be stamped with generation time, potentially as frequently as an hour. Other timescales are possible as well, and this will provide a further layer of granularity and detail and attributes that's not available under the current LGC framework. Lastly, we also note that there are timing restrictions that are proposed to apply to retirement of the REGOs, so there will be less ability to bank them. There is a proposed up to 24 months time limit for the use of regular REGOs and 18 months for below baseline REGO certificates. So again, further details on that proposal are carried in the department's consultation on the REGO rules. So that is the first segment of today's session, in which we wanted to provide a brief recap and overview of the REGO element of the Guarantee of Origin scheme. Again, as noted a number of times, further details on many of the elements which I've just covered will be available in the department's consultation documentation on the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin that's currently available. We will now turn our focus to the cost recovery element of the scheme, which is the key focus of today's webinar. So, begin with, what is cost recovery? So Matt provided a couple of comments earlier, but cost recovery is the process by which the Australian government is able to charge the non-government sector with some or all of the efficient costs of conducting a specific government activity. So the cost recovery processes which apply for many government schemes involve the determination and recovery of costs associated with conducting activities or providing services. The Cost Recovery Implementation Statement, or CRIS, that we referred to earlier, is a standard document that is mandated by our colleagues at the Department of Finance that sets out how cost recovery arrangements for a particular agency or scheme to be calculated and implemented for the purpose of recovering costs. So you'll see in this component of the presentation a number of references to the CRIS, the Draft Cost Recovery Implementation Statement. This is the document that's currently out for, the draft version of this document is currently out for public consultation on the DQ website and is the basis of today's presentation in respect of setting out the proposed cost recovery arrangements for the Guarantee of Origin scheme. So in addition to everything that you'll hear today, if you haven't already, we'd strongly encourage you to review that draft CRIS, as it does set out in greater detail all of the proposed cost recovery arrangements intended to apply for the renewable electricity GO component of the scheme. So linking from general cost recovery proposals to Guarantee of Origin, the Guarantee of Origin scheme is proposed to be fully cost recovered in time, with cost recovery arrangements to be phased in to facilitate scheme launch and transition. So there are a number of phasing arrangements in play, and a number of arrangements exist both for the product Guarantee of Origin side of the scheme, as well as renewable electricity Guarantee of Origin side of the scheme. And we will focus on the REGO elements in today's session. So in order to determine the appropriate cost recovery arrangements, the CR, as part of the cost recovery process and part of the Australian government charging framework, has developed has undertaken charge cost modelling for operation of the Guarantee of Origin scheme. The cost recovery modelling is intended to capture the expected costs of administering the REGO scheme, and some of the proposed costs and charges are set out in section 3.2 of the draft CRIS, which again you may wish to pursue in further detail after this session. The modelling for GO cost recovery and REGO cost recovery relies on a number of inputs in respect of expectations around assessment effort for the regulator, costs associated with non-indirect elements such as IT, and also a number of forecasts and assumptions around the level of and types of participation across the scheme. So there's a broad base of robust assumptions that have underpinned the modelling that's been undertaken. But we also note that as the scheme commences, inputs for this cost recovery modelling will be refined over time, particularly once real scheme data becomes available. So in respect of the proposed arrangements for cost recovery in the REGO space and what we'll go through in the next couple of slides, cost recovery for the REGO scheme is proposed initially to broadly align with the current cost recovery arrangements that exist under the RET. Sorry, we'll just go back to we'll stay with the previous slide for a moment. Thank you. Yep, so the REGO scheme costing is broadly intended to align with the RET fee pricing. And this is proposed as a support and transitional mechanism, noting that a lot of the existing renewable electricity facilities that may consider a transition across to the REGO scheme to provide that long-term enduring renewable electricity certification and potentially take advantage of some of the new features available under the REGO. We want to ensure that there is the ability for a smooth transition between while these two schemes coexist, and in order to facilitate a smooth transition to the new scheme as it comes into play. We note that there's one exception in this, which is the fee charge for registering as a person. We will come to that in a couple of slides' time. The last thing I wanted to note on this slide is that the cost recovery arrangements, which I'll step you through in the next couple of slides, are not fixed in stone forever. This is, as noted, the first consultation on the proposed cost recovery arrangements for the REGO component of the Guarantee of Origin scheme. And so certainly there will be the feedback that's provided as part of this process will be considered in final cost recovery arrangements. However, looking longer term, cost recovery in general is intended to be an ongoing process, and the cost recovery settings for the scheme will be subject to review and adjusted over time. So there will be an annual cost recovery review process. So certainly we'd expect that this, as Matt noted at the top, is not going to be the be-all and end-all of the conversation. It will be an ongoing conversation as the scheme continues to mature. So as part of this ongoing refinement of the cost recovery arrangements and moving the scheme forward, we expect that over time there may be deviations in the cost recovery arrangement between REGO and RET, in particular noting that the RET scheme is only partially cost recovered, whereas the GO scheme policy directs that full cost recovery is to be achieved over time. And so this will be an element that we will be closely monitoring and will be revisiting in future years of scheme cost recovery arrangements. One element of achieving full cost recovery is that we note a key difference in the cost recovery arrangements for REGO is that there is a legislative authority for an annual levy to recover broad-based scheme costs. So this would be a levy that could be applied to all holders of on a per registered facility basis, with the intention that this levy would cover the costs of broad-based activities like the operation of the regulator's compliance or education elements of the scheme, which are not provided to a specific individual, but provide benefits to the cohort as a whole. So this is a new form. Excuse me. This is a function that's not available currently under the renewable energy target, and so this represents a potential future change or deviation between the way that cost recovery is currently applied in the renewable energy target versus what may be applied in the REGO scheme in the future. However, as noted in the initial stages of the REGO scheme, it's proposed that broad alignment is maintained with the RET, and so for the commencement of the scheme, it's proposed that this levy will be set to zero, and we will see that in the coming couple of slides in respect of the proposed cost recovery settings. I'll move now to a brief overview of where it is that cost recovery is proposed to apply in the in the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin scheme. So we'll note that the cost recovery charging points for the scheme should look broadly similar to those who already are participants in our large-scale renewable energy target scheme. So as noted, there will be a fee to register as a person, a relatively straightforward fee that must accompany the application to be a scheme participant. There will then be a fee for the registration of a facility or a power station. So again, a fairly straightforward process. And likewise, there will be a fee for the registration of a REGO certificate. So all of these charge points should align closely with those that currently apply for registration of facilities under the renewable energy target and creation of large-scale generation certificates. In addition to those three key fee charging points, as noted, there will be an annual levy proposed, or the power exists for an annual levy, which would recover those broader base scheme costs, and it's proposed that that would apply on a per facility basis as an annual upkeep levy for each facility registered. I'll move now to the last couple of slides, which set out the outputs of the Clean Energy Regulator's cost modelling for operation of the REGO scheme in the first year of operation. So please note that this slide is not what the prices proposed to be charged are. This is simply showing the outputs of the charging model for reference. So these tables and figures, which are available in the draft cost recovery implementation statement, set out the outputs of the regulator's modelling, again, as noted, based on current evidence and assumptions that have been fed into the modelling process, which result in the costs to the regulator that you can see set out on the screen. So these costs relate to the forecast modelled costs associated with the regulator undertaking administration for each of these activities, be it the registration of a facility or registration of certificates or the broad-based annual levy cost. So this is the raw outputs of the charging models. As noted, there is intended to be a phased approach to cost recovery and guarantee of origin, and that also applies to the renewable electricity component of the scheme. And so with the process by which these costs are modified involves the application of waivers, which will modify the prices that will actually be charged to scheme participants. So on the next slide, what you can see are the proposed prices, which are intended to apply for the first year of operation of the scheme. So as noted, these costs are broadly intended to align with the current fee settings that are set out in the renewable energy target. So we note that the registration of person fee is not covered by that RET align process. That registration of person fee is a common fee that is paid across all participants in the GO scheme, and so that one is not linked directly to the renewable energy target. But certainly in the case of registration of electricity generation systems at different sizes, as well as the registration of certificates, the pricing is intended to align broadly with what's currently charged under the renewable energy target. There aren't, for registration of energy storage systems and aggregated systems, those don't have a direct analog in the renewable energy target. So those fees are set at a slightly different level. And as noted previously, that annual levy is proposed to commence at $0 in the first instance of the scheme, noting again that desire to maintain alignment with the renewable energy target. So this the figures listed in this table are likewise available in the draft cost recovery implementation statement and form the basis of what's proposed to be charged for the scheme in the first year at scheme launch and for the initial operation of the scheme. As discussed previously, there will be an ongoing annual review process, and so there will be further opportunities for this to continue to evolve in time. We've come now almost to the end of the initial presentation segment of today's session. So I'll leave you with a couple of next steps, and then we will move to the question and answer component of today's session. So hopefully that has helped provide a bit of a demystification and insight into the cost recovery consultation that's currently underway, and a bit of a recap on the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin scheme. As noted at the top, the consultation on cost recovery arrangements will close on the 18th of July, and we certainly encourage anybody who is interested to please provide a submission to that process, and you may find a survey and submission portal for that on the department's website. The CER will also be then considering stakeholder feedback on the CRIS once the consultation period has closed, and that will then be any sort of feedback and consideration will be built into the final version of the cost recovery implementation statement for the scheme, which will then be provided endorsement by the Minister. The cost recovery provisions, once endorsed, will also be incorporated into Guarantee of Origin legislation, in particular the subordinate legislation in the rules and the regulations. So you may see in a number of places where those items are out for consultation, a number of to be confirmed or to be announced provisions that relates to placeholders, which will be completed once the cost recovery arrangements with the scheme have been finalised and agreed. And as noted, again, the cost recovery implementation statement for the scheme will be published on the CL website prior to the scheme launch. So it provides a fully transparent overview of the cost recovery arrangements that are proposed to apply to the scheme. With that, that takes us to the end of the presentation component of today's webinar. We might move now to respond to a number of the questions which I can see are coming through. So, Sandra.
Thank you, Jet. And look, some wonderful questions coming through. Thank you. And please continue to add your questions. And I just remind people that you have the option to upvote as well. So if there's a question that's already been listed that you think, oh, that's something I'd really like to hear about, please vote that one up. Look, I think we'll start with the question in relation to the cost table in section 3.1. It was noticed that there's a large difference in the registration of a person cost estimate between REGO and PIGO. So there's the amount there. So 228,000 for 81 persons versus 6,000 for 22 persons in 25-26. Is this correct? And are the REGO estimates based on LRET only costs, or have they also taken in SRES costs? And we just have a hand up as well there. Someone might.
Thanks, Sandra. I might respond initially to the question as written. So thank you very much for the question. So the costs that are proposed in the framework are very much fully aligned with the Australian government charging framework, and the modelling that the regulators undertaken aligns with that framework. We note that the scheme modelling for REGO and PIGO are effectively different in the sense that they don't necessarily share the same. They certainly don't share the same product base. They share a fairly different stakeholder base, and broadly the scheme, while they share common elements of legislation, are sort of two sub schemes that operate under the overall Guarantee of Origin banner. So the modelling that's been undertaken reflects the differences in nature of operation between the two elements of the scheme, and so they're not necessarily directly comparable in that way. There is also, as noted, a number of assumptions and inputs that have gone into the modelling process, which again, noting the different elements of the REGO and the product go sides of the scheme, may result in differences in output from the modelling. Overall, we do note that the modelling is undertaken with the best available information at this time. As noted, there will be those future review processes that will allow for incorporation of real scheme data, and so we may see future iterations of modelling with different data may return different values. Sorry, I apologize. There was one more element to that question, which was around REGO estimates based on LRET only costs or taken in SRES costs. Those elements probably, broadly, I guess, as a high level comment, the REGO modelling is intended to apply only to the REGO scheme, and so doesn't directly consider the cost of operation of any of the other regulated schemes, including either large scale or small scale renewable energy target.
Lovely. Thank you, Jet. Alrighty, so the next question then is, will the proposed annual levy be at individual facility or people organisation level?
Thanks, Sandra. And to clarify, the the annual levy is intended to apply on a per registered facility basis.
Lovely, thank you. Would the registration of a facility cover the annual levy for its first year of operations, or is the registration cost in addition to the annual levy?
Thanks, Sandra. That's a good question. So the registration fee for registration of a facility and the annual levy are two separate costs or charging points. So no, the registration fee would not include the annual levy for the operation of that facility. What's proposed to apply is that at the point of successful registration of a facility, there will of course be that registration fee payable, and the proposal is to apply a prorated approach to the annual levy for that facility for the remainder of the relevant year.
Thank you. Does the fee waiver apply until the end of the RET scheme at financial year 30/31?
Thanks, Sandra. So the duration of application of the waivers is not something that I'll be able to comment on in respect of the ultimate duration. At present, the proposed RET alignment of fees in respect of the REGO cost recovery arrangements is proposed to apply for scheme commencement, but will be subject to future review process through that annual cost recovery review and consultation approach. So at this stage, I won't be able to provide a firm timeline in respect of how long the cost recovery arrangements will be in play as proposed for the start of the scheme, but note that there will be that ongoing review and annual consultation process, which will then allow the scheme's cost recovery approach to be reconsidered on a periodic basis.
Thank you, Jet. So what are the waiver criteria?
There are no criteria in respect of the waiver. So the waiver that was referenced is merely a it's the mechanism by which the RET aligned pricing is achieved. So you don't need to satisfy any particular criteria to achieve the waiver. All of the prices that were outlined in the table and that have been set out in the draft quiz are intended to apply to all participants in the REGO scheme.
Just wanting to confirm that there is no proposed fee for retirement of REGOs, the same as is the case for LGCs currently.
That's correct. No charging point is proposed for retirement of REGO certificates.
Is there a forecast price of a REGO certificate for trading?
Thanks, Sandra. So that question relates to the future operation of the scheme market. So that's not something which would be covered certainly under the remit of cost recovery, and broadly not something that the regulator is able to comment on or provide insight on at this time.
Right, thank you. If a facility generates more than one type of renewable electricity at a single site, so co-located, will they be covered by the one registration and annual levy, for example, solar and biogas to electricity?
Thanks, Sandra. So that's a good question. And this comes down to the operation of the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin rules for facility registration. So I won't be able to comment off the cuff definitively on the eligibility for registration of multiple energy sources under a single facility registration. But essentially, if the proposed facility is able to be certified as a single facility, it would be counted, I guess, as a single facility for the purposes of registration, for the purpose of the annual levy, etc. If the facility, across its multiple energy sources, is registered as a number of different different sub-facilities or smaller facilities that have separate registrations under the scheme, they would then be subject each to an individual registration fee and annual levy. I would, in respect of where the rules are landing for registration of facilities with aggregated or different energy sources, I would defer to the department's current consultation on the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin rules and the rules around registration of facilities. I won't be able to comment definitively on that component at this time.
Thank you, Jet. So for a system that is already on LGC, will it be automatically transferred to the REGO scheme after the sunset of LGC?
Thanks, Sandra. So that one's probably more of an operational question outside of strict cost recovery framework. So I'll provide a general comment, but that may be one to revisit at a future date with the regulator. So the Renewable Electricity Guarantee of Origin component of the scheme has provisions, and these are set out in the Act in respect of registering power stations that are currently accredited power stations under the renewable energy target. So there is a transition mechanism or pathway for current RET power stations to choose to register in the REGO scheme. The way that that's currently set out, that's not an automatic process. Any current operators or participants in the renewable energy target who wish to participate in the REGO scheme will need to apply to the regulator to be registered under REGO, and would then be, among other things, be covered by the cost recovery framework that's proposed here. In respect of what happens post 2030, there are no rules set yet in respect of what will occur post the end of the scheme, and so at this stage, I don't think we'll be able to comment if there's going to be proposed for any automatic transition provisions or things like that to apply. So that's one that would have to come back to at a future date.
Thank you. Is the REGO a mandatory or a voluntary scheme? RET is mandatory with a renewable power percentage, RPP target. If REGO is voluntary, it makes a big difference between the two schemes.
Thanks, Sandra. So yes, confirming, as noted at the top, that the Guarantee of Origin scheme as a whole is completely voluntary, and the renewable electricity component of the scheme is no different. So there is no mandatory requirement for facilities to register in the REGO scheme. There are also no statutory targets associated with REGO certificates, unlike what currently operates in the renewable energy target with LGCs and STCs. So yeah, not mandatory. It's a voluntary scheme.
Lovely, thank you. With regards to time stamping, would generators choose how they would like the REGOs to be time stamped? For example, whether, can they choose whether it's hourly, daily, monthly, or yearly?
Thanks, Sandra. So yeah, that again question strays a little into the operational elements of the scheme, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues who will be leading on the ultimate implementation. So broadly, the rules do allow for different time periods of stamping to be applied. Some of those rules are currently out for consultation at present, and so I would suggest that reviewing the department's materials on renewable electricity guarantee of origin certificates and proposed rules for time stamping would be the most appropriate place to seek confirmation on the current approach. And then in respect of how that is operated with the regulator, that's again something which will ensure that guidance is provided and available in line with the final legislative design a little bit closer to scheme launch.
Thank you. Will storage facilities need to purchase REGOs to certify that the dispatched energy was charged from a renewable source?
Thanks, Sandra. So the rules around storage, the operation of storage in the REGO scheme, there is currently a concepts paper out for consultation on the department's website, which focuses on the proposed approach for storage. I might defer to my colleagues at the department to speak to the proposed rules around that and the current coverage of that consultation paper. Emma, I think you've got your hand up. Can I invite you to speak to that one?
Sure, thanks very much, Jet. Energy storage systems need to demonstrate that dispatched electricity represents renewable electricity. There are two ways to do this. It can either be through the retirement of renewable energy certificates, so that's the retirement of REGOs or the surrender of LGCs, or if the electricity is directly supplied from an electricity generation system through what we call in the rules and in the Act a direct supply relationship, then we recognise that that electricity is renewable electricity and you do not have to surrender certificates in respect of it. There's further information in relation to that in the energy storage concept paper, which, as Jet mentioned. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. Very helpful. Okay, so the next one then is, will ETs receive exemptions in line with the existing RET?
Thanks, Sandra. So to clarify, ETs here refers to emissions-intensive trade-exposed facilities. And coming back to a response on the previous question, there is no mandatory surrender or statutory liability associated with the REGO scheme, unlike the renewable energy target. And so the exemptions, under the renewable energy target that apply to ET entities relate to those statutory liabilities. Because there is no liability component of the REGO scheme, that won't apply to that won't be applicable to the REGO scheme as a whole. So broadly, there will be no exemptions because there is no liability.
Thank you. Will aggregated systems incur multiple site levies?
Thanks, Sandra. So the rules for aggregated systems are still under development, and any further details on that process are best directed to our colleagues at the department. In respect of the cost recovery application for aggregated systems, again, it comes down to the ultimate rules and what people seek to register. Broadly, if the rules permit that aggregated systems are registered as a single facility for the purpose of the scheme, which would be sort of just the one application, then we expect that would be treated as a single facility for the purposes of cost recovery. So it would be subject to a single registration fee and a single annual levy. Again, all of that is a little bit, I would sort of caveat that we'll obviously have to wait until rules and details for the operation of those types of facilities are made available. But if it is a single facility application, then it should be subject to cost recovery in the way that a single facility of any other type would be.
Thank you. Given the ongoing costs associated with being registered under the scheme and the restrictions on the surrender of below baseline REGOs, will there be any benefit to facilities whose generation is largely below baseline participating in the REGO scheme?
Thanks, Sandra. So below baseline power stations that currently are unable to generate large-scale generation certificates for the below baseline component of their generation will benefit from registering in REGO by virtue of being able to create certificates for that generation, which previously could not be certified under the renewable energy target. In respect of whether the overall sort of cost-benefit analysis for scheme participants, that obviously will be a case-by-case business decision of businesses. But as noted, the rules around the operation of below baseline certificates are currently out for consultation. And so again, I would defer to departmental colleagues and their consultation documents for any sort of further comment and details in that vein. I also note that there will be, I guess, the current environment for below baseline REGO certificates is not really known because the scheme hasn't yet commenced. So obviously we'll have to see how that plays out from a market perspective. But as Matt Power noted at the top of today's session, the regulator is certainly very interested in people's views on the prospective operation of the scheme, and so would be very happy to have further conversations about how potential participants are thinking about the scheme, participating in the scheme, and how what may be available in way of facilitation or discussion.
Thank you. Next, and just note that we've only got about 4 minutes, so the last few questions now. But any questions that we haven't responded to, as Jet mentioned earlier, we will look at the general themes there and we'll get responses up and available. So will the fee for certificate registration be charged twice in the case of storage systems? So REGO created by Wind transferred to create a BESS REGO. Wouldn't that be double charging?
Thanks, Sandra. So under the current cost recovery arrangements as proposed, there would be 2 fees applied for that process, as noted in the original creation of the wind generation REGO, and subsequently the creation of the storage REGO. This reflects that the regulator would be recovering costs for the administration of 2 separate processes. So the cost of administering the generation certificate and then again administering the creation of the storage certificate. So in that respect, it's not my response to that would be it's not double charging in the sense that there are 2 separate activities and processes which are being undertaken, and so costs would be sought to be recovered from both activities respectively.
Thank you. So post 2030, when the REGO replaces the RET, will there be a mandatory statutory scheme percentage or target for REGOs?
Thanks, Sandra. That's very much a future question of policy and not one that I'd be able to answer at this time.
Are the fees reflective of the costs of running the entire GO scheme, including PGO administration costs, or have you sought to design the REGO costs in such a way that cross-subsidisation for aspects that are specifically related to product GO admin are minimised?
Thanks, Sandra. So that's a question around the modelling and design of the modelling of the cost recovery arrangements that underpin the design of the proposed cost recovery for the REGO scheme. So as noted in an earlier response, the product GO and REGO elements of the scheme are broadly considered separately because they do represent, certainly by way of the conduct of individual activities like registering a power station or registering a REGO certificate. The modelling approach that's been taken for the REGO side of the scheme is not shared with the modelling approach that's been taken for the product GO side of the scheme because they are notably different types of schemes, different types of certificates with a different stakeholder base. So different assumptions and inputs have been used in the modelling of each of those segments respectively. And so very much in line with the Australian government's cost recovery framework, the costs that would be sought to be recovered at each charging point relate to the costs associated with the operation of that particular activity. So for example, what are the costs of registering a battery storage facility, or what are the costs of registering a renewable electricity GO certificate?
Thank you, and I think we've hit time, Jet. We haven't been able to get to all of the questions, but we have covered a few of those. So I'll hand back to you then, Jet, just for closing remarks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you to everybody who's attended today. I hope that it has been of value, and there's been certainly a lot of engagement in the Q&A component of the discussion, which we really welcome all of that engagement. And we hope that today's session has been enlightening and will help assist in your consideration of the consultation materials that are currently out and available for your further consideration. As noted, a number of contact details are available on the screen if you wish to get in touch with ourselves or our colleagues at DICU on anything further in respect of cost recovery or elements of the scheme. We also look forward to seeing submissions from a number of you. And of course, if there are any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, we will make a recording of this webinar available to you all once it's available. And thank you again very much for your time. Hope to hear from you soon. Thank you very much, everyone.